Welcome to AI Unraveled, your daily forensic briefing at the intersection of business and artificial intelligence. It is Tuesday, April 7th, 2026. I'm your co-host, Anna. Today's episode is brought to you by Arya and Jamgamind. As companies like Target begin shifting the legal liability of AI errors directly onto the consumer, enterprise governance is your only shield against class action lawsuits. AI Arya provides the zero-trust sandboxing required to deploy autonomous agents safely. And to navigate the immense financial and regulatory friction of the AI economy, Jamgamind delivers technical-grade audio forensics for the C-suite. Visit jamgamind.com. Let's be brutally honest, most top 10 AI tools lists are written by interns and optimized for clicks, not for the C-suite. I've eliminated the noise. Head over to jamgamind.com/toolkit for the AI Executive Toolkit. This is my private, forensic vetted stack, featuring heavyweights like Chatbase, 11 Labs, and Arya. These aren't toys. They are enterprise-grade weapons designed to bridge the terrifying gap between raw innovation and actual governed ROI. Grab the exclusive listener perks and start deploying real infrastructure today. Today, we look at the infrastructure supremacy. Anthropic hits $30 billion in ARR, Intel joins Musk's megafab, and Nvidia redefines the tech stack. Let's look at the bottom line.
If you look back at the early days of electrification, there was this brief magical window where everyone was just staring at the light bulb.
Right, like a parlor trick.
Exactly, a novelty. But the people who actually made history, the ones who built empires, they weren't staring at the glass. They were looking out the window, figuring out how to own the power grid, the copper wire and the power plants.
Yeah, that's where the real money was.
Right. So welcome to today's deep dive. It is April 7th, 2026, and today we are conducting a full technical and strategic autopsy of the day's massive AI developments, pulling from financial filings, internal leaks, and, well, a whole lot of corporate drama.
It's an incredibly fitting analogy to start with, honestly, because if you look at the source material today, all the evidence points to one unavoidable conclusion. The era of the experimental, consumer chatbot is dead.
Completely dead.
Yeah. We have officially entered the era of infrastructure supremacy. The companies actually winning right now aren't building consumer toys anymore. They are treating intelligence as a heavy industrial utility.
Right, like energy or water or steel fabrication.
Yeah.
And if you want to see exactly how lucrative that industrial utility can be, we really need to look at Anthropic.
Oh, absolutely.
I saw the headlines this morning about their new financial metrics, but the math just seems completely detached from reality to me. Like, how are they growing this fast? What do the actual numbers look like?
The numbers are staggering. Let's walk through the timeline here. At the end of 2025, Anthropic was sitting at a $9 billion annualized revenue run rate.
Okay, wait, let's clarify that for everyone listening. Annualized revenue run rate, or ARR, isn't cash sitting in the bank today, right?
Right, exactly. It's a forward-looking metric. So it means if they just maintain their current recurring subscriptions and don't add a single new user, they will make that amount over the next 12 months.
Okay, so $9 billion projected at the end of 25.
Exactly. Then, by mid-February, so barely 6 weeks later, they reported a $14 billion ARR. And today, they just announced they have surpassed $30 billion.
$30 billion. That is, that's more than a twofold growth in less than 2 months.
It's unprecedented.
How do you actually achieve that? Help me unpack the unit economics here, because that doesn't happen by selling $20 monthly subscriptions to, college students writing term papers.
It absolutely doesn't. You achieve that through ruthless P&L profit and loss focus. They looked at the cost of computing power versus the revenue a user brings in.
Right.
A teenager generating meme images costs them money, but a developer paying for an API, that provides a massive reliable margin. Anthropic successfully executed a total B2B pivot. They now have over 1,000 business customers spending more than $1 million annually.
Wow. So over 1,000 businesses dropping $1 million a year. That is incredibly sticky revenue.
Extremely sticky. And the prime example in our sources is Claude Code. This is a targeted go-to coding tool specifically for enterprise developers. By February, Claude Code alone generated a run rate revenue of over $2.5 billion.
Just from that one tool.
Just from that. Anthropic realized that selling a reliable, governed utility to developers is where the actual money is. They aren't trying to be your friend. They are trying to be your infrastructure.
Which is fascinating because it brings me to what looks like the polar opposite of that strategy, Meta.
Oh, yeah. Meta's approach is wild right now.
The sources highlight this internal leaderboard Meta is running right now called Claudeonomics. Meta employees are actively competing to consume the most AI tokens.
Let's define tokens quickly for everyone. A token is basically a piece of a word that the AI processes.
Right. So across Meta's 85,000-person intranet, workers burned through 60 trillion tokens in just 30 days.
And the top user averaged 281 billion tokens, which is just mathematically absurd for one human to process.
Right. Silicon Valley is calling this trend tokenmaxxing. It's like watching someone eat 10,000 calories a day, but they never actually go to the gym.
That's a great way to put it.
Sure, you're consuming a massive amount of energy, but where is the muscle? Where is the hard proof that burning 60 trillion tokens translates into actual business ROI or revenue gains for Meta?
It doesn't. And that is the hard truth of infrastructure supremacy. Some of these employees are apparently just leaving AI agents running on a loop for hours simply to pad their numbers on this leaderboard.
Wow, just a massive waste of compute.
Total waste. It's consumption without direction. And honestly, this stark reality seems to be finally catching up with OpenAI, too.
Right, that's the pivot I wanted to get to. OpenAI topped a $25 billion ARR in February, which is massive, but they're suddenly slamming on the brakes in the consumer space.
Yeah, hard brakes.
They just shut down their Sora generative video platform. They ended their $1 billion content partnership with Disney. They even put their ChatGPT adult mode on hold.
It's a massive course correction. I mean, you have OpenAI's CTO, Sarah Fryer, explicitly acknowledging that the enterprise sector is how they will, quote, build a sustainable business model.
So they're throwing in a towel on the flashy stuff.
They're finally admitting that consumer applications, the video generators, the adult modes, the toys, are a distraction. The compute costs are just too high. Treating AI as an enterprise utility is the only profitable business model at scale.
But here's the thing. When a company the size of OpenAI realizes it might be losing the enterprise infrastructure race to a hyper-focused rival like Anthropic, they don't just quietly change their product roadmap.
No, they don't.
They often try to rewrite the rules of the entire game, which explains the timing of the massive corporate governance crisis currently engulfing OpenAI.
It is a crisis of historic proportions.
I mean, The New Yorker just published a brutal, deeply investigated expose on the CEO, Sam Altman. Over 100 interviews. It covers his entire career arc, going all the way back to conflicts at his early startup, Looped, or Y Combinator partners reportedly tried to push him out.
Yeah, but the most damning details are coming from inside the house.
Exactly.
Specifically, the unseen memos from former chief scientist Ilya Sutskever and the private notes from Dario Amodei, who, we should note, went on to found Anthropic.
Right. Sutskever's memos, which were apparently built from 70 pages of Slack messages and HR documents, alleged that Altman actively misrepresented safety protocols to the board.
That's a massive allegation.
And Amodei's private notes independently reached the exact same conclusion. The quote from the piece is chilling. He basically wrote, "The problem with OpenAI is Sam himself."
This raises a huge question about how the market absorbs this kind of leadership instability at the highest levels of tech. The piece quotes a Microsoft executive saying there is a small but real chance Altman is remembered as a Bernie Madoff, Sam Bankman-Fried level scammer.
Wait, a Madoff comparison from their biggest investor.
Exactly. When your primary backer is drawing comparisons to the largest financial frauds in history, you have a severe corporate governance problem.
So how does a pre-IPO company, an $852 billion giant, survive this level of C-suite chaos and polarization? I mean, surviving this requires absolute clarity on what is actually being said behind closed doors. For decision makers navigating these massive C-suite conflicts and pre-IPO regulatory maneuvers, Gemgamine provides technical-grade, human-verified audio forensics across finance and tech. Visit djamgamemine.com. So, assuming you have that kind of forensic clarity, how on earth is OpenAI attempting to navigate this PR nightmare?
Well, they are attempting to control the narrative by shifting the focus entirely to geopolitical existentialism.
Wait, what does that mean in practice?
Look at OpenAI's newly published 13-page social contract policy document. At the exact moment Altman is facing a devastating expose on his history of deception, his company publishes a sweeping blueprint for society to navigate superintelligence.
Oh, right. And the demands in this blueprint are wild. They're asking Washington to tax AI-driven profits, to create a sovereign-style wealth fund that pays dividends to every American, kind of like what Alaska does with oil revenue.
Yeah, Alaska-style dividends.
They're suggesting a federally mandated 4-day work week and taxes on robot labor.
It is the most detailed blueprint any tech titan has ever published for redistributing the wealth from the very technology they are actively building.
It sounds almost like science fiction.
It does. But if you look at this through the lens of a forensic strategist, this isn't pure altruism. This is aggressive regulatory positioning. The CEO is basically telling the U.S. government that his technology is going to break the economic system.
Okay, let me push back on that cynical view for a second. Is it possible Sam Altman is actually just terrified of the superintelligence his team is building? Like, why are we assuming this is a calculated regulatory trap rather than genuine panic?
It's a fair question. It could be both. But structurally, by begging for heavy regulation for sovereign wealth funds and containment playbooks, OpenAI is attempting to build an insurmountable regulatory moat around their technology before they go public.
I see.
If the government mandates massive safety and compliance protocols, OpenAI can afford to meet those standards. The scrappy open source startup working out of a garage cannot. Regulation solidifies monopolies.
Which makes perfect sense from a P&L standpoint. But here's the flaw in that plan. Software is just math. You can't run a multiple gigawatt sovereign wealth fund on math alone. You need the physical iron to compute it.
You absolutely do.
And before we dive into the hardware layer, let's be brutally honest. Most AI tool lists are optimized for clicks, not the C-suite. Etienne has eliminated the noise. Head over to djmgamind.com/toolkit for the AI Executive Toolkit. This is a private, forensic vetted stack featuring tools like chat-based 11 Labs and ARA enterprise-grade weapons designed to drive actual governed ROI. Because, as we were just saying, moats require heavy machinery.
Exactly. Software is just the top floor of a very tall building. If you want to command geopolitical power, you need silicon and electricity.
Which brings us perfectly to NVIDIA's 5-layer cake thesis. At the HumanX keynote in San Francisco, NVIDIA laid out the reality that AI is no longer just a smartphone app or a cloud software evolution. It is the largest physical infrastructure build-out in human history.
And they break this build-out down into 5 distinct sequential layers. Energy is the base, then chips, then infrastructure, then models, and finally, sitting at the very top, applications.
Right. And you can't build the upper layers until the base is poured. So let's look at the energy and chips layers. The sources point to Elon Musk's Terafab project.
This is a huge development.
Massive. This is a $20 to $25 billion semiconductor complex planned for Austin, Texas. And the goal is to produce 1 terawatt per year of compute capacity.
A terawatt of compute. Let that scale sink in for a second. This isn't a tech startup. This is heavy industrial manufacturing. And the partnership structure here reveals everything you need to know about where the industry is heading.
Right, because it's not just Musk alone.
No. Musk is partnering with Tesla, SpaceX, and his own AI company, xAI. But the critical addition to this alliance is Intel.
Intel CEO Lip-Bu Tan hosted Musk before the announcement. Now, Intel is officially bringing its process technology, high-volume fabrication, and packaging expertise to Terafab.
Yes, but they are building very specific things here. They're building edge inference processors for Tesla's self-driving systems and radiation-hardened chips for SpaceX.
Wait, let's define that for the listener. Edge inference basically means the AI is doing the thinking locally on the device like inside the Tesla car itself, rather than sending data back and forth to a massive cloud server, right?
That's spot on. Edge inference reduces latency because the brain is local. And radiation-hardened chips are essential for SpaceX because standard silicon degrades and errors out when exposed to cosmic radiation in orbit.
Wow.
This is the ultimate example of hardware-software co-design. You are building physical silicon customized for one specific AI software task. The hardware and energy layers are now fundamentally dictating the pace of global innovation.
Because you can't do the software without the tailored hardware.
Exactly. You cannot train or run the next generation of models without massive, dedicated physical infrastructure. Just look at how Anthropic is securing their position in this war.
Yeah, Anthropic just announced an expanded partnership with Google Cloud and Broadcom. They have secured access to multiple gigawatts of TPU capacity starting in 2027. First, for the audience, a TPU is a tensor processing unit. It's a specialized chip, Google, designed specifically to do the heavy math required for neural networks, much faster than a standard computer processor, but securing multiple gigawatts of it.
That is power on the scale of entire cities, dedicated solely to training and running the Claude family of AI systems. You are literally talking about plugging these data centers directly into nuclear power plants.
It's mind-blowing.
The thesis of infrastructure supremacy dictates that whoever controls the power grid and whoever controls the silicon packaging, like Intel's contribution to Terafab, ultimately controls the intelligence utility itself.
So if we follow that logic, if you are drawing gigawatts of power, you aren't a software company anymore. You are critical infrastructure.
100%.
You are as foundational as the power grid or the water supply or the internet itself, which means a cyber attack on that utility isn't just a tech sector IT problem. It is a catastrophic national security event.
It is the ultimate systemic risk. I mean, if an adversary takes down an AI model that thousands of hospitals or financial institutions rely on for daily operations, society basically grinds to a halt, which is exactly why the strategy around deploying these models is fundamentally changing.
And we see this shift clearly in Anthropic's Project Glasswing.
This was a fascinating read.
The sources detail that Anthropic is so deeply concerned about unprecedented cybersecurity risks, specifically the likelihood of large-scale AI-driven cyber attacks this year, that they are taking their unreleased, most advanced model, codenamed Mythos, and they're giving it away to big tech and cybersecurity defenders first.
Right. They are distributing the Mythos preview to a highly select group. You've got CrowdStrike, Cisco, AWS, Apple, Broadcom, Google, JPMorgan Chase, Microsoft, and Nvidia. Plus, about 40 other organizations responsible for critical software infrastructure.
Wait, so they are giving their most powerful, unreleased code to their corporate rivals and defense companies first. That's almost like, I don't know, inventing a revolutionary new type of nuclear reactor. But before you ever turn it on for the public, you give the blueprints to the military and the top security agencies just in case it leaks. Am I looking at that right?
You are looking at it exactly right. They want these defenders to use Mythos to scan and secure their own systems and to harden open source code before the bad actors get their hands on the technology.
That's a massive shift in thinking.
It is. Securing the codebase is no longer just an IT priority, it is a geopolitical imperative. Anthropic recognizes that infrastructure supremacy requires a zero-trust security architecture.
Meaning you assume every system is already breached and you verify every single request.
Precisely. By giving the world's primary cyber defenders a head start, Anthropic is acknowledging that this utility is simply too powerful and too dangerous to be released without reinforcing the absolute foundation of our digital infrastructure first. Defense needs an asymmetric advantage against AI hackers.
But this brings up a massive paradox that we have to talk about. While big tech is actively hardening their cyber defenses at the top level to protect national security, the actual day-to-day applications of these models, the top layer of that 5-layer cake, are causing absolute legal nightmares on the ground.
Oh, without a doubt. Because as we transition from consumer software to industrial utility, the legal framework of the United States is basically buckling under the weight.
If you are running a business right now, this is the single most important thing you'll hear today. Let's look at what's happening with Target. The sources report that Target is now forcing customers to accept the legal liability for errors made by their AI shopping assistant.
Which is just wild.
Think about the implications of that. How does a massive retailer even attempt to offload the liability of a hallucinating neural network onto a consumer who's just trying to buy groceries?
It shouldn't be able to.
Right. If you deploy an AI agent on your site tomorrow and it promises a customer a refund you didn't authorize under these new precedents, who is holding the bag?
It's an incredibly aggressive legal maneuver, and it highlights a critical vulnerability. Target is essentially saying, we built the utility, but you are responsible for how it behaves. And honestly, when companies like Target start forcing customers to accept the legal liability for an AI's mistake, the era of experimental chatbots is over. ARI, pronounced AIRIA, provides the necessary zero-trust security posture management to ensure your enterprise agents don't trigger massive legal exposure.
And retail liability is really just the tip of the iceberg here, because the escalation into medical liability is where the stakes literally become life and death.
Yeah.
You brought up Legion Health in the notes, and this is just wild. Legion Health just won state approval to let its AI app directly refill psychiatric medications.
Completely autonomously.
Yes. The first time a state has greenlit an AI agent to handle this process with absolutely zero clinician oversight in the loop, the AI evaluates the patient data and authorizes the refill.
If we connect Target's retail liability maneuver to Legion Health's medical liability reality, a terrifying picture emerges.
Yeah, no kidding.
We now have edge inference agents making autonomous, high-stakes decisions from what you buy at the store to the psychiatric medication you consume. The legal frameworks of 2026 are completely unprepared for a world where the intelligence utility, hallucinates a dosage or, misinterprets a symptom.
So the liability sits in this massive gray area that hasn't been thoroughly tested in court yet.
Yeah.
Like, who do you sue when the power grid makes a medical mistake?
Exactly. Who's responsible? The software dev, the chip maker, the hospital.
So if we zoom out and look at the whole board, we have an industry sprinting toward $30 billion run rates. They're demanding multiple gigawatts of nuclear-level power. They are begging the government for sovereign wealth funds and regulation. And at the exact same time, they are trying to offload the day-to-day legal risks of their products onto the consumer.
It's a gold rush, but instead of panning for gold, they're trying to dam the river and charge tolls.
That is perfectly said.
And that leads to a critical final thought for you to consider today. If intelligence is truly becoming a heavy industrial utility, just like electricity or water or telecommunications, history shows us a very clear pattern.
Regulated monopolies.
Utilities eventually become heavily regulated monopolies. As you watch these massive conglomerates sprint for infrastructure supremacy, ask yourself, are they really trying to win a free market? Or are they racing to become the indispensable utility that is so vital to national security, the government is eventually forced to bail them out and protect them from competition?
A sobering thought to leave us on. Subscribe to AI Unraveled on Apple Podcasts to always listen completely. Ads IAI-AOR. We started today talking about the light bulb. Well, the glass is broken, the gigawatt power lines are strung, and the fight right now is over who controls the switch. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
That concludes our forensic business rundown for April 7th. The strategic signal for today is infrastructure supremacy. We are no longer living in a software economy. Artificial intelligence is heavy industry. When Anthropic posts a $30 billion run rate strictly by selling intelligence to other corporations, and Elon Musk drops $25 billion to build a physical chip factory in Texas, the reality becomes clear. The companies that own the compute, the energy, and the enterprise contracts are the ones building the future. The rest are just writing code on someone else's server. If you want to own your infrastructure instead of renting it, you need the right tools. Head over to jamgamine.com/toolkit for my AI executive toolkit. Etienne has stripped away the hype to bring you a forensic vetted stack of enterprise-grade solutions. This episode was made possible by Area and Jamgamind. Hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts to enjoy this briefing completely ads-free. I'm Anna. Stay sharp and keep unraveling the future.
And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads, we build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit jamgamind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building.